Look, Simon, when people think of Saudi Arabia, they immediately think of almost nothing but oil, right? But I want them to think of things such as Arabic numerals.
Hi, I'm Simon Yeites, and I'm here with Salman Al-Ansari, an independent political analyst, to share his thoughts in 10 minutes or less on Saudi Arabia's past, present, and future. He's the founder of the Washington, D.C.-based SAPRAC and a frequent guest on the BBC and CNN. He's also been on multiple EU panels. Hi, Salman. Thanks for being with us today.
Hi, Simon. Thank you so much for having me.
So, Salman, let's get started. But before we speak about today's topic, you pointed to a general lack of understanding with regard to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Do you still stand by this statement?
Yes, I do. I think many outside of Saudi Arabia aren't aware of its incredible history or the many innovations it's contributed in shaping the modern world. And I remember as saying, people who know Saudi Arabia don't speak about it, and those who don't know Saudi Arabia do speak about it.
That's an interesting point. Can you give us a brief overview of Saudi Arabia's history?
Sure. So the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia was first established in 1744. The kingdom then fell, rose up, fell again, and finally rose up again in 1932. As far as I know, it's the only country in the world that has fallen twice and recovered with the same leadership. There is really a strong sense of confidence in the ruling family, I believe.
Where would you say that confidence comes from, Salman, or even what sustains it?
Yeah, I think it all comes down to history and unity, to stability and trustworthiness, which the Al Saud family demonstrated over hundreds of years. This family's roots predate the country's founding back in 1744. Diriyah, which is the Al Saud's hometown, was first established in 1446, and they established it. Another interesting fact is that the Al Saud lineage can be traced back to Banu Hanifa tribe, who ruled the Najd region from the 7th century and played a substantial role supporting the Prophet's call. And Banu Hanifa defended the Messenger of Islam. They basically blocked Quraysh tribe's ability to import precious and essential agricultural products if they continued to persecute him. So the Saudi royal family is deeply, deeply entrenched in the region's history.
So it is very clear to me that Islam is deeply intertwined with Saudi Arabia. I got a question for you, though. Would separation of church, or rather mosque and state, even be possible or even desired by the people?
Yeah, well, Simon, I think that's a very sensitive topic for Saudis, but the best way to answer this question is to delve a little deeper into the actual effect of Islam on the Arabian Peninsula and specifically current-day Saudi Arabia. They actually caused the first form of cultural and scientific globalization. In the 7th century, after the emergence of Islam, Arabs unified the Arabian Peninsula and entered the global stage exclusively through the vehicle of Islam.
So what happened then when they entered the global stage?
Yeah, so the Arabs combined the knowledge and cultures of the greatest civilizations, such as the Indian, Chinese, Persian, Egyptian, Greek, Roman, and the ancient Middle Eastern civilizations, to name a few. This rich amalgamation benefited the modern world for more than 800 years. Key discoveries in science, mathematics, medicine, engineering, and law were introduced to the world. And I remember a saying by a famous French historian, Gustave Le Bon. He said, "No nation has ever achieved the greatest number of inventions within the shortest time as the Arabs did." And he also stated that the Arabs civilized Europe physically, mentally, and morally. And in the words of a Jewish German scholar, Rosenthal, he said that the Arab civilization was a miracle.
It's unfortunate that the extent of Arab contributions isn't common knowledge, but I'd like to know some more. Can you cite some examples for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Simon, when people think of Saudi Arabia, they immediately think of almost nothing but oil, right? But I want them to think of things such as Arabic numerals. And I also want them to think that about the fact that the first university in the world, according to UNESCO, was established and constructed by a lady from Mecca. And her name was Fatima al-Qurashi, Fatima al-Fihri al-Qurashi. She built it in Fes, Morocco in 859 AD. And what about the fact that algebra is actually an Arabic word, or that 60% of the named stars have Arabic-derived names? And let's look at the influence on medicine, for example. The father of surgery, Abu al-Qasim al-Zahrawi. He was an Arab physician, and his work was used as a foundational reference in Europe for 500 years. And also the father of chemistry, Jabir bin Hayyan. The father of the scientific method and optics is Ibn al-Haytham, or the father of jurisdiction, Imam Malik from Medina. Even the French law was largely based on his book, Al-Muwatta. And so many other ones. For example, like the father of secular Europe, Ibn Rushd, who's also known in the West as Averroes. So please, when you think of Saudi Arabia, do not just think about oil anymore. Instead, remember that the harsh desert of Saudi Arabia was what I would personally call the father of modern science. And you can quote me on that, by the way.
The father of modern science, it's definitely an interesting take. But surely we can't deny the strong influence of the Arabs on the Western world that led to the Renaissance. So then, looking at the world today, what role does Saudi Arabia play in the 21st century?
Yeah, great. So today, Saudi Arabia is considered to be the largest country in the Middle East, home to over 30 million people, and it is the heart of the Arab and Muslim world. It is the custodian of the two holy mosques. A quarter of the world's population, 1.7 billion people, face Mecca 5 times a day to pray. The kingdom is a global leader in the 21st century. It is a G20 nation, and Riyadh is the capital of global efforts against radicalism. And the Muslim World League, for example, and its Secretary General, Dr. Al-Isa, changed the course of history by inspiring global tolerance and coexistence. In addition to that, the kingdom is reforming, I would say, astronomically under Vision 2030.
Salman, can you tell us a little bit more about Vision 2030?
Sure. So Vision 2030 is Saudi Arabia's vision for the future. It is a comprehensive economic and social reform plan focusing on its role as a global investment powerhouse, a key hub between 3 continents, Asia, Africa, and Europe. According to Edelman, Saudi Arabia was ranked the first in the world for government trust in 2020. And Saudi is considered to be number 1 in digital competitiveness among the G20 nations, and second after Japan in 5G technology. In solar energy research, it is 6th in the world. In scientific research, it is number 1 in the Arab world and 29th globally. In IP, intellectual property, it is 1st in the Arab world and 22nd globally. Look, Simon, with these kind of statistics, it is undeniably clear that the Saudi Vision 2030 is on the right track. And I personally consider this vision is a continuation of the past legacy.
Well, I have no doubt that a vision is critical for driving any sort of meaningful long-term change. But thinking more about human rights reform, we often hear that Saudi Arabia is under fire for human rights offenses. How is Saudi Arabia responding to these concerns?
Well, there's definitely been a lot of conversation about that side of things, and we still have a long way to go for sure. But looking at the facts as opposed to general opinions, Saudi Arabia has made a lot of substantial reforms, especially during the last 5 years. For example, in 2020, the World Bank had a report and recognized the kingdom as the top reformer in the field of women's rights. And definitely credit for these reforms is owed to Saudi leadership and spearheaded by the Vision 2030's engineer, the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Look, Simon, there are a lot of stereotypes about Saudi Arabia, but I hope we can change this. And I really believe that we are making a lot of progress.
Well, Salman, this has definitely been a fascinating discussion. Thank you so much for joining us here today and sharing your thoughts on Saudi Arabia. And I think the best title for this discussion would be Saudi Arabia, the Untold Story.
I like that. Thank you, Simon, for having me. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you.